Today I'm tackling the internet's most burning questions about video game addiction. Hey there, my name is Kamadair, and I was once consumed by gaming. In fact, I would stay up all day and night playing. It was completely out of control. For me, games like StarCraft, Counter-Strike, and World of Warcraft were not fun games, but addictions that almost destroyed my life. I know I'm not alone, and there are so many others out there just like me. So if you've ever asked something like, how much is too much? Or am I addicted? Then stick around because the answers might surprise you. From one gamer to another, let's explore the complex world of gaming addiction. And what better way to dive deep into that world than by heading over to Google. So let's start with the first question. Is gaming addiction real? Yes, gaming addiction is real. Gaming addiction, contrary to some misconceptions, isn't just a buzzword thrown around, but a tangible issue affecting real people. Gamers who often start their journey for fun, achievement, or for stress relief can sometimes find themselves trapped in a web where the line between passion and addiction blurs.
Sean was 20 years old when gaming took over. His life changed in the blink of an eye.
It was hours on hours on hours every single day as much as I could. It was my whole life for a period of time in that middle school space.
At his worst, Charles was gaming 65 hours a week. He lost his job, had an empty bank account, and was thinking about suicide. That forced him to face his addiction.
Combination of the fantasy, the progression where it's never ending. You can never really complete the game because there's just so much to do. As soon as I got home, I would turn my computer on. When I was at school, I would be thinking about WoW. At lunchtime, I would have a WoW book in my bag because I wanted to learn about things. I wanted to see how I could get my character to be better. That's all I thought about.
These aren't abstract or rare cases either. Thousands of people all over the world have opened up about their struggles, which range from neglecting responsibilities and strained relationships to health issues like disrupted sleep, anxiety, and depression. And as you'll see later on, the problems can be truly severe. While the majority of gamers enjoy their hobby without consequences, there's a subset for whom the fun goes beyond passion, and they experience genuine withdrawal symptoms when not playing, while also prioritizing virtual worlds over real-world commitments.
I went through a withdrawal over about my first 10 to 14 days. I was having trouble sleeping. I was incredibly irritable. It messed with all my emotions. It threw everything haywire.
It's literally the same symptoms that you'd see in a drug or alcohol addict.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm 5.5 years out of rehab now. No desire to go back to gaming at all. Not that the cravings don't come by from time to time, but my life is so infinitely better now that it's not worth it.
For me, it came about when I decided to quit gaming. About a few weeks, 30, 40 days maybe. I don't know if you experienced as well, all these withdrawal symptoms of being away from gaming. Yeah.
Like what?
Headaches, moods. I physically had to shut myself out of the house, put my computer in the wardrobe, lock it away. I had deleted all my games, my passwords, gave my friends passwords just because I couldn't keep myself away from playing this game. And I had so many urges. I had urges every single day.
Yeah.
At a point, I think it was about 70 days into the 90-day initial challenge was when it really became bad for me, and I couldn't stay in my house all day. The fear that I'd just go back on my computer and play. And then eventually after the 90 days I thought, hang on, I don't need to play these games. Why was I so addicted to them?
Their personal stories and struggles are important reminders to the severity of this issue. And it's not just gamers that are affected, but those around them as well. For instance, family members of affected gamers have also echoed these sentiments, recounting how the captivating grip of virtual worlds can sometimes overshadow the joys of normal reality as a family. For instance, here's what my mom had to say.
This is crazy. You're not eating, you're not sleeping, you're not moving, you're not doing anything, you're just playing video games. And I remember looking at his dad and going, oh goodness, what are we dealing with?
How fast did gaming take away the son that you knew?
Within 3 months, I just saw a drastic change in his life. He started staying up all night, and his dedication to his work went down. He didn't eat All he did was stay on that computer with that game.
And these gamers and families haven't only been sharing their stories in the media, but showing up at public health facilities seeking help. That's why it's important to acknowledge this issue. Not only because people are saying themselves they are struggling, but it also has a public health impact. For example, in Switzerland, Geneva University Hospital has recorded twice the number of cases for health-related issues associated with gaming in the past 5 years. And in Hong Kong, in 2016, the number of help-seeking cases related to excessive gaming increased over 60% compared to the year prior. And that's just data from 2016. Imagine what it looks like now after the pandemic. So to address the gravity of this issue, the medical and scientific community began studying gaming addiction as a potential clinical diagnosis. Often when we think about addiction, we think about substances like drugs, alcohol, or nicotine. But it's well established that something like gambling can be an addiction, and that falls under a class of what's called behavioral addictions. So what do we mean by behavioral addiction? A behavioral addiction is a type of addictive behavior that does not involve a substance. However, the need to experience a high from the behavior becomes so strong that the addict continues to persistently engage in the activity despite negative consequences in their life. For example, things like shopping, gambling, binge eating, porn, and sex have been investigated as behavioral addictions, but the exact criteria that unites them is still up for debate. Some emphasize the role of the brain, such as dopamine deficiency and reward, which we've talked about on this channel many times before, while others focus on concepts like overwhelming urges and withdrawal symptoms. For some issues, that can eventually lead to being included in a diagnostic manual, such as the DSM-5, which not only validates the significance of the issue, but also standardizes its diagnosis and treatment, ensuring affected individuals receive appropriate care and support, especially when they seek help at a place like a doctor's office or a hospital. It's also important to encourage governments to fund research and prevention initiatives to reduce harm. And so this brings us to our next question. Is gaming addiction in the DSM-5? The DSM-5, which stands for the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th edition, is a principal authority for psychiatric diagnosis in the United States. As of its latest edition, the DSM-5 does not formally list gaming addiction as a standalone diagnostic category. However, in Section 3, which contains conditions requiring further research, the DSM-5 introduced internet gaming disorder, which is also known as IGD, as a potential area of future study. And in the future, it will be considered for inclusion. It's important to note that updates to the DSM don't happen often. Actually, usually only every 15 years or so. IGD in the DSM-5 is categorized by a persistent and recurrent use of the internet to engage in game, leading to significant impairment or distress over a period of 12 months. The manual outlines several criteria, such as preoccupation with games, withdrawal symptoms, loss of interest in other activities, and unsuccessful attempts to control the gaming behavior, among others. One thing that might surprise you is that the criteria does not include a certain amount of time you play games as part of the criteria. So it's not about the amount of time you play, but the nature of it and how it ultimately affects you. Now, of course, if you happen to play video games 10 to 12 to 16 hours a day like I did, it's pretty difficult for gaming to not impact different areas of your life. But if you only play for 30 minutes a day, it's also difficult for gaming to impact your normal functioning. You get the point. In essence, while the DSM-5 acknowledges the emerging concerns surrounding excessive gaming, and it has opened the door for further research, it stops short of officially recognizing it as a formal disorder. However, the fact that it's mentioned is a major step and not something anyone should take lightly. Just for example, gambling disorder, which is a well-established, legitimate issue, and I don't think anybody watching this video is really debating about whether or not gambling can really be an addiction or not, was actually only officially added as an addictive disorder in the DSM in 2013. Prior to that, it was defined as pathological gambling under their impulse control disorder classification. This shift signified a growing recognition of the similarities between substance-related addictions and behavioral addictions, such as gambling, and obviously opens the door to other behaviors being classified in the future. Which brings us to our next question. Is gaming addiction a disorder? Gaming addiction, which is often referred to as gaming disorder, has actually indeed been officially recognized as a mental health disorder, just not by the APA and the DSM-5. In 2018, the World Health Organization added gaming disorder to the 11th edition of the International Classification of Diseases, the ICD-11. But wait, what's the difference between the ICD-11 and the DSM-5? Well, in simple terms, both are diagnostic manuals, but they have different origins, purposes, and areas of focus. The ICD is published by the WHO and utilized worldwide as the international standard for health data and covers all diseases and health outcomes and problems, not just mental or psychiatric disorders. The DSM, on the other hand, is published by the American Psychiatric Association, the APA, and focuses exclusively on mental disorders. It is mainly used in the US, but has influence in clinical and research settings globally. So, according to the WHO, gaming disorder is characterized by a pattern of persistent or recurrent gaming behavior, which may be online or offline, manifested by impaired control over gaming, increasing priority given to gaming over other life interests and daily activities, and the continuation or escalation of gaming despite negative consequences. And for a clinical diagnosis to be made, they recommend the criteria to have occurred over a period of the past 12 months. Acknowledgement by the WHO is a big deal, and this was a monumental moment for people who suffer from gaming addiction around the world. However, it's essential to approach this topic with sensitivity. Recognizing it as a disorder is not meant to pathologize everyone who enjoys gaming, but to provide a framework for understanding and assisting those who may be struggling. Labeling conditions as disorders can unfortunately carry a stigma. For some, this label might lead to feelings of shame or defensiveness, potentially creating barriers to seeking help or getting support. It's important to differentiate between healthy recreational gaming and behavior that might be harmful, while also emphasizing the need for understanding, compassion, and support over judgment. Now, if you're watching this and you're curious about your gaming, you can go to gamequiz.com and take the quiz on the homepage. It will ask you a series of 9 questions to determine your type of gaming and also provide suggestions on what to do next. So, is gaming addiction bad? Gaming addiction, when it takes hold, isn't merely a challenge. It can evolve into a destructive force in someone's life. For the individual gamer, the effects can be heart-wrenching. Days blur into nights, with real-life moments now fading into the background. The temporary fun of virtual victories is prioritized over everything else, and their life suffers because of it. Some of the most common negative effects of video games include things like lack of motivation, poor emotional regulation, bad sleep schedules, increased anxiety and depression, suicidal thoughts, conflict in their relationships, aggression, and obesity problems. For gamers struggling with addiction, it will take everything from them, even their life's most precious moments. Memories of laughter, shared stories, and intimate moments with loved ones are replaced by isolation and disconnection.
The other consequence is that when I had really shallow relationships with the people closest to me, with the people about whom I should have cared the most. When my mother was dying of cancer, it took about a year from when we got to know it the first time. Since gaming was the absolute only thing that I really cared about, I was nursing her too at the home for a period of time. But I loved my mother every time I was with her, partially because it was uncomfortable seeing your mother in pain and you not being able to do anything, but also because I just wanted to go play games as soon as possible. I would rush those things and never really spend a long time talking to her or having any stronger bond with her. And I also, in some instances, should have acted as some sort of authority. I was supposed to know what to do and how to help, but I didn't. I was very mature and I didn't know how to deal with problems of where to go in a hospital, etc. And I didn't spend as much time as I could have otherwise with my mother as she was dying, and I just basically rushed to play games instead of caring for my mother.
For families watching their loved ones slip away, the experience is agonizing. Parents, siblings, and partners often feel helpless, witnessing the transformation of a happy individual into someone barely present and who they no longer recognize. Their attempts to reach out are often met with resistance, frustration, or sheer indifference. The home, once a place of love and connection, becomes a battleground of miscommunication, broken promises, and shattered trust. In essence, gaming addiction doesn't just hurt the gamer. It sends a ripple of pain, confusion, and loss throughout their entire life. And these situations aren't just painful, but they can turn out tragic. Oliver Cronin was a 13-year-old boy from Australia. He was described as a happy and healthy child who was loved by his family and friends. He was a smart kid who performed well at school. That was until tragically on October 25th, 2019, he unexpectedly passed away. His mother had found him in a doorway, The cause of death? Suicide. This tragic story captures your heart because it doesn't make sense. How can a young 13-year-old boy, happy and healthy, with a loving family and well-liked by his peers, find himself in a dark spot without hope for a way out? Well, in the 12 months preceding his death, Oliver became addicted to gaming. He was completely obsessed, playing games like Roblox, Minecraft, Clash of Clans, and Fortnite. This in turn affected his behavior. He became irrational and aggressive at times. It was like he was a different person than the happy boy everyone knew. Not knowing what to do, his parents tried to restrict his access in an attempt to temper his behavior. But as we see with some kids, this actually leads to an escalation of aggression, and Oliver became verbally and physically abusive towards his parents with extreme temper tantrums. This sort of behavior didn't only happen at home either, and in the weeks preceding his death, he was involved in physical altercations with other students at school, resulting in 2 suspensions. According to the official coroner's report, Oliver's history of concerning or dysfunctional gaming was approximately of 1 year's duration. The description of his behaviors suggests he would have met the definition of a gaming disorder as outlined before. Further, the coroner found that neither the school nor his parents were sufficiently aware of the risks posed by the extent of his gaming, nor did they recognize that the changes in Oliver's behavior were associated with his increased use and reliance on online gaming platforms. The coroner also found that the current understanding of the prevention of gaming disorders and the diagnosis and treatment of gaming disorders is neither extensive nor rigorous, along with no special public health funded services specific for gaming disorder and its prevention in Australia, which is where Oliver lived. Although stories like Oliver's are rare, they speak to the seriousness of a gaming addiction and the harms that can occur when untreated. In another video, I have profiled other cases of gamers who have also tragically passed away from their addiction, and you can check that one out if you're curious. On top of that, it's a reminder that there is a serious lack of public health support for individuals and families who are struggling, and we need so much more of that. Now, I'll share more on this later, but I want to quickly mention that if you or someone you know is struggling with a gaming addiction, you are not alone, and please reach out for help. So, is gaming addiction a growing problem? The simple answer is yes. It appears to be. The highest quality research has found it's around 2 to 3% of gamers who struggle with a gaming addiction. This number might seem small on the surface, but when you consider the global gaming community, which consists of hundreds of millions of individuals, the absolute number of affected people becomes significantly large. Moreover, this 3% only represents those at the extreme end of the spectrum. Many others experience adverse effects from their gaming habits without necessarily meeting the full criteria for a disorder. They might not be diagnosed, but their challenges are still very real, manifesting in disrupted routines, strained relationships, and diminished well-being. As we look at the landscape of gaming today, several factors suggest the problem may only escalate. First, more people are gaming than ever before, and they are starting at younger ages too. Childhood and adolescence are crucial periods for cognitive and emotional development. These are becoming saturated with screen time, setting the stage for future issues. Just look at recent trends of internet use by children and adolescents in Japan. On the left side is the percentage of internet use, and on the bottom, the ages. In 2019, 36% of 3-year-olds, yes, 3-year-olds, were using the internet. 2 years later, in 2021, 67%. By the age of 5, that number is 81%. And don't even get me started on the 34% of 1-year-olds who use the internet. The point is, with so many children beginning to use the internet at earlier ages, this will certainly have an effect on growing the number of individuals who end up with problems. Here are just a few simple reasons why younger children are more at risk. First, early childhood is a vital period for brain development and the establishment of cognitive, social, and emotional skills. Excessive screen time can divert time and attention from activities that are crucial for that growth, such as physical play, exploration, and face-to-face social interactions. Habits formed at a young age can also be deeply ingrained and harder to change later on. If children get used to turning to screens for entertainment, comfort, or distraction, they might rely on it more heavily as they grow older. I think one of the big ones here people don't pay enough attention to is about emotional regulation. When we learn to use screens at an early age for our emotional regulation, we often neglect to develop other coping strategies as well, and that leads to more screen time issues. It's part of why we often see a lot of people who use games to escape, why there's a lot of interpersonal conflict related to screens, and why some individuals even get aggressive. They are self-medicating their emotions with screens. There are also physical health and sleep disruption concerns, both of which are crucial for children's growth. And of course, the lack of parent-child bonding, when excessive screen time is reducing the quality time shared between parents and child. So yeah, I think with excessive screen time occurring for children at younger ages, in the future, that will lead to growth in gaming and screen time problems. And the reality is, it takes 5 to 10 years for this demographic to age up and begin to experience the serious negative consequences of their behavior, such as failing at college or other behavioral related issues. So time will tell. But that's not all. As a viewer of this channel, you're well aware that modern video games have increasingly sophisticated and in some cases, predatory game design mechanics. Elements such as microtransactions, loot boxes, and psychologically tuned reward systems can encourage prolonged play and overspending, pushing players towards unhealthy behaviors. Some players find these mechanics more appealing, which in turn grows the overall number of players engaged in the gaming ecosystem who wouldn't be involved otherwise. And of course, some of these players are also more vulnerable to experiencing harm from these sorts of mechanics. So as the player base grows, so too will the number of gamers experiencing harm, or worse, a full-blown disorder. So in sum, while the current prevalence of gaming disorder may hover around 3%, given the rising number of gamers globally, the earlier ages of exposure, and the evolving nature of game design, there's a clear indication that gaming addiction is and will likely remain a mounting concern for our society. All right, so now we've covered whether or not gaming addiction is a real issue, whether or not it's in the DSM-5, what an actual mental health disorder is, the devastating effects gaming can have on someone's life, and how it will lead to issues for our society for generations to come. But there's one final question we need to cover, and that's what to do if you need help. If you or someone you know is grappling with gaming addiction, remember, you're not alone and there's always hope. Overcoming this challenge is entirely possible. Not only have I seen that in my own life, but over the past decade of working on Game Quitters, I've heard from tens of thousands of gamers who have overcome it as well.
Then my life turned around completely after I stopped gaming. And since then, I joined a graduate program for 2 years, and I was working for one of the biggest energy companies there. Then I was in Copenhagen for another year, working for an aviation company. And then I got yet another job in working with wind turbines. But then I don't think any of that would have been possible if I would have still been like hooked on games and not controlling my gaming addiction.
I decided to quit 38 days from now, I believe. Yes, it is 38 days from the time that I'm recording this. It was because I found the Game Quitters community and the Stop Gaming subreddit and other people who have been through similar things that I have been through. So it was immensely helpful. The benefits of quitting are enormous even after a short period of time. They're not something amazing if you have your life together. But for me, I've done things I otherwise would have procrastinated on and never finished or even started, and I did so many of them. Things that would have taken me 3 to 6 months, I did in a day or two. I feel a lot happier. I've cleaned my room. I've exercised a lot more. I started going to a martial arts class. I developed way stronger bonds with people close to me because I was more open and not reluctant to talk to them because of guilt or shame. And in general, I feel a lot happier and energetic. And this is still only the start.
You really have nothing to lose by stopping gaming and seeing what you can start to achieve.
I quit video games. I've not played a single video game since 2022. My life has significantly improved. Significantly. I'm now traveling the world. I live in Thailand. I have an incredible network and I'm building a business. I'm building an online following. I'm making an impact in the world.
Just as a game has levels to conquer, you too can level up in life, regain control, and rediscover joy. I want to encourage you that there's a whole world out there filled with genuine connections, experiences, and passions just waiting for you. I can't imagine my life now without traveling, surfing, DJing, or spending quality time with my family. That's why I'm so passionate about the work we do at Game Quitters. So if you need guidance, go to GameQuitters.com, where you can find hundreds of resources resources, and also supportive community. We have an online forum and Discord community for gamers and a Facebook group for parents. We also have a ton of other content here on YouTube and on our podcast. You can find all the links to everything down in the description. Additionally, you can seek the expertise of a licensed mental health professional. If you do, just make sure to confirm with them that they have a track record of successfully treating individuals with gaming issues. Unfortunately, it's trendy these days to say you know about gaming addiction when you really have no clue. So do your research and find someone who is the right fit for you. Finally, never give up. The journey might be tough. It will have ups and downs like life always will. But there's nothing more you need to know than you can overcome it and real life is worth fighting for.